The white people who moved to Australia 200 or so years ago did a very poor job of basically everything that related to Indigenous people. They did a very poor job when it came to not stealing their land, for one. They did a very poor job of protecting them from disease, and in fact, sometimes I think they did that on purpose. They did a very poor job of not killing them, and they did a poor job of not destroying their culture. One of the parts of Indigenous culture that was destroyed very thoroughly, especially in my home state of Victoria, was language, or is language, I suppose. They thoroughly destroyed the Indigenous languages. And to add insult to injury, the people who were appointed protectors or guardians of Indigenous people, they decided that they would write down these languages. And they did a piss poor job of it. And so, as someone who is interested in the Indigenous history of the place where I was born, I have looked through many of these original notes and books, and the spellings, as well as the understanding of Indigenous grammar, is appalling, or are appalling. One of the biggest issues is that the white people who were recording these languages recorded them and tried to fit them within a European framework, usually with Latin on their minds, because these people were obsessed with Latin. And it is one of my real pet hates. Not that I hate Latin, I don't. It's an interesting language, it has an interesting history, but the fact that they were so obsessed with Latin and ancient Greek and added it to so many areas of our lives where it really wasn't necessary, just, ooh. As an English teacher, it is one thing that gives me the absolute shits. The people of the time, they were trying to fit Indigenous languages into a European framework. It didn't work. And so, from the notes that I have seen, many of the Indigenous people were essentially speaking in baby language to try and get their point across to the ignorant white people. Now, I want to admit I am a white person. I have skin as white as milk. So, I am really talking about, I suppose, people like me. But there was just something so, I suppose, well, very colonial about the entire thing. And there was an idea that Indigenous languages were beneath the real, true, clever people of Europe, and that they were simply barbarians speaking their barbarian languages. The problem is that that idea is so far from the truth, it's not funny. Like, these languages, the languages of Indigenous Australians, were and are very, very complex. They had many, many different words for differing locations and distances, and they would use demonstratives, so words like this, that, these, those, to also mean time, but they would have different forms, and then they would create words by putting different endings onto words, and that would tell you who was doing something, what they were doing, who they were doing it to. So these words were very complicated, but also very flexible. And when the Europeans went in and decided that they were going to write down words and some different bits and pieces of these languages, they never really focused on the grammar. They focused on, how do you say this in your language? And oftentimes it is translated into my stomach or our stomach or your stomach or whatever. because the person probably would have been pointing and they were saying, that's my stomach, or that's your stomach. So there are so many little bits and pieces in there. The other thing is, they were not getting the intricacies of the demonstratives. And so everything is this, that, those, these, and they just did not understand. And so I feel so bad for Indigenous people, not only because of what happened to them in the past and what continues to happen to Indigenous people now, but the fact is that these people went and recorded their language poorly. So poorly, in fact, that I don't know how they'll make heads or tails of this information. Now, there are a few languages from Victoria that have been recorded a lot better, such as Wemba Wemba. Wemba Wemba has a much better framework, and there are good examples of grammar, and there's a whole list of words, and it shows you how complex and how many layers of nuance there are in the language that is not captured by the early settlers and their word lists. So I just wanted to talk about this for a little while because it's something that's really been bugging me for some time. I think also it angers me that I have to be, at least in terms of my skin color and origin, related to these people that did these barbaric things. It just really isn't very nice. And I feel so badly for Indigenous people because they lost everything and they still have to walk outside every day and see the people who did it to them. And that must be hard. Anyway, that's just a little bit of the problems that exist around the Victorian languages. And if you're interested in seeing any of these books, I can have a look at them and I can show you some of the issues that exist with these books. But until then, thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button or something.